every agent listening to this, here's the biggest thing you can take away from this conversation around the lawsuits. Don't wait for NAR to come save your ass.
If you're not getting educated about local and national real estate market conditions, whether you're a real estate agent, you're in finance, accounting, you're a mortgage broker, you're in title, or you're just someone that gets asked questions about the market, you're doing yourself and your clients a disservice. This is the Knowledge Brokers Podcast. I'm Tom Toole here with Byron, Lazine. Lisa Chinotti's jet setting again. Apparently she owns like a third home in Dallas now, is what we heard. I'm not really sure. Maybe she'll grace us with her presence next week. A lot of stuff to unpack here, Byron. I want to lead off with the Keller Williams settlement for the Sitzer Burnett lawsuit. So Keller Williams settled. They're the third company to settle in this lawsuit. They're agreeing to pay $70 million. Daryl Frost, their spokesperson, said this will not impact our operations or our ability to support our franchisees and agents. Gary Keller came out and said, we're thankful this settlement provides our agents and franchisees with much needed relief, stability, and freedom from distraction while preserving their ability to run their businesses independently. As we move past this settled lawsuit, all of us at Keller Williams are focused on what we do best, empowering our entrepreneurs to continue delivering exceptional value in this rapidly evolving market. I think this is a good move for Keller Williams just to get this over with. I'm a big believer in it's a distraction, like Gary said. NAR still in the suit. So's Home Services. Byron, you're the guru here. You're the expert. What do you think about all this?
Well, it's a good move if the settlement as proposed, Keller Williams wants basically relief from any copycat lawsuit. So if you get relief, obviously the national class action that Ketchmark is leading, that's a pretty easy one. Sitzer, Burnett, though. But what about the other 30, 40 law? Are you going to get protection from all of those? If you do, 70 million well spent. Ketchmark does a victory lap here off of this settlement. His quote is, I think this shows tremendous leadership on his behalf meaning Gary Keller, and his willingness to respond what the jury system is telling their company to do. And so he goes on to say in his commentary after the settlement that the 70 million, they did a lot of investigation and back and forth. They spent a lot of time so that the settlement, the negotiations of the settlement appear to have been ongoing for quite some time. And they got as much money as they could. He says if we were trying to get more than the 70 million, we would have bankrupt Keller Williams. He goes on to say Home Services and National Association of Realtors can easily cover the entire jury verdict and the entire judgment. Well, the entire jury verdict and the entire judgment is $1.78? Yeah, $1.78 billion with, if it were to be trebled in the law, it's going to be $5.3 billion. He's making the claim, Ketchmark is, that Home Services and NAR can easily cover the $1.78 billion or the $5 billion. I don't know if he's thinking, they're going to go hit up Uncle Warren and get the money from Buck. I just don't know where he's calculating that. I don't think the Home Services of America brokerage is sitting on billions of cash. I could be mistaken there without hitting the parent company up. But according to Ketchmark, the combined now $208.5 million that would be combined on Anywhere settlement and Remax's previous settlements, now along with Keller Williams, is going to go against, it'll be credited against the Sitzer Burnett verdict amount. So there's still a lot on the hook. You can imagine that based on those comments from Ketchmark, Home Services hasn't settled yet because he's asking for substantially more. He believes there's more money there. But when everybody settles, he says, we've got a verdict for a lot more. We could go get more, but we don't want to bankrupt them. We want these companies, here's his quote, to change their practices. And so that's why this settlement was reached. Every time there's a settlement, it's a step. David's getting stronger in its fight against Goliath, and that's what's happening here today. And so I imagine that Home Services is going to be next. They're going to settle, and if Michael Ketchmark is right, which he's been right a lot, it's going to be a much bigger number than anywhere, then Remax, and then now Keller Williams. And that's going to leave NAR on an island by themselves as all of these brokerages settle. And these first three that have settled, they all change practices that Ketchmark alluded to, like not mandating agents to be a part of NAR.
Mhm.
So these brokerages are leaving NAR off on their own. And that's going to have huge repercussions for what the future of the association looks like, especially once, and I think it'll happen at some point this year, especially once Home Services of America settles. NAR continues to say they're not going to settle. They're going to go through the appeal. I think you go through that appeal process on your own based off of, you know, what the ability they've shown to fight this case so far. They're going to bankrupt themselves if that's what they do, if that's what they decide to do, continue to move forward. But going back to what this means for Keller Williams agents, it lifts a cloud off. Under the proposed settlement, they're going to, not be required to make offers of compensation. They're not going to be required to be a member of NAR. All these settlements say you're not required to follow. This is something Catchmark wants in. You're not required to follow NAR's code of ethics. That one makes me smile because the code of ethics is a made up document, and that's clearly in there for all of them. Display offers of compensation made by listing brokers or agent, like the clarity, the disclosure is a lot to deal with. These different practices. Anything else stick out to you on what they're now changing in their business practices?
I mean, it mirrors what we've heard.
Yeah.
I mean, this actually started with the NAR DOJ investigation, where it was very similar stuff. And I'm a big believer in transparency as a business person. Forget that we both sell real estate, Byron. We run teams. We get that. Consumers like transparency. People you work with like transparency. This isn't the age of holding on to that MLS book anymore, and I find that to be really important. And there's a couple things that this dovetails into. I do like this move for KW. I think it's a smart move just to get over it when you can settle instead of going to court. NAR again is, I mean, it's like what's that Murphy's Law? What can go wrong will go wrong, Byron. I mean, it's just everything they do. It's like a fumble, or like they look like a bunch of bumbling idiots. I mean, you've got the video that got posted by the NAR CEO, which we'll get into in a second. What's going to happen here is everything's going to be clear and disclosed. And I think that's number one. And we're already starting to see zero co-ops. We're already starting to see 2% co-ops, 1% co-ops. This is going to be the new norm of doing business. And it's the MLS attachment to NAR that's going to be the interesting part here. I know there's now a rival association coming up, which we can talk about. There was another settlement regarding the pocket listing lawsuit. There's a lot to unpack here. So I agree with everything you said. I like the move for KW. It lifts that cloud up. You're not worried about it as much. I wonder if there is protection. If you can negotiate protection against these other copycat lawsuits, no brainer in my view. I think that's kind of what you hope for here.
Yeah, if you get that,
So,
it's money well spent.
for sure. So, but the bigger issue here is this trade association we're forced to belong to in some cases. You talk about a made up document, right? NAR also has a made up rule about this clear cooperation rule, which settled last week with Mauricio Umansky and the PLS, which is now the NLS. There, and I know he was on stage at Inman. Did you go to Inman Connect? Were you there?
No, Vanessa, our senior editor, went for one day.
Good, smart, because I don't think it's a good use of time. You go one day, you get what you need,
She,
and that's
we
it.
had a
So I'm a
couple,
big believer in
yeah.
that.
The CEO of Mosaic.io. We love Sheila. We wanted to hear her talk. I'm going to be doing a pod with her coming up. She's brilliant. We wanted to make sure we got that and a couple other things.
Well, good decision on the CEO level, Byron. I love that. So, NAR has this history of having made up rules, and they talk about this. There's this settlement agreement that was, if it gets approved, NAR again is the only defendant left in this case, which it seems like they just don't want to settle these things. So Mauricio Umansky, he had the PLS, which was called the Property Listing Service. He settled with Bright MLS, Midwest Real Estate Data, and the California Regional Multiple Listing Service. These are the largest MLSs in the country, about this pocket listing clear cooperation rule, where if the short of it is, if you want to market a property publicly to anybody not inside of your company and your brokerage, and no one-to-one marketing, you have to list it in the MLS within one business day of doing that, which is effectively telling sellers, here's what you have to do with your home
Mhm.
based on a rule they made up to feel like they're protecting people. But I mean, Byron, you're a homeowner. I'm a homeowner. I don't like people telling me what to do with my asset if I want to hire them. And so there's some legitimacy to this suit. And then you got Mauricio Umansky. He's talking about this new association that they're forming, which I've got a clear opinion on. It just seems like NAR is just they can't do anything right now. I mean, should they just shut it down? I mean, I think that might be the best move
Yeah, I
here,
mean,
right?
we know that in 2024, your business operations will be more important than ever. Once I figured this out, my business was able to scale and take off. See, generating leads is one thing, but getting that deal across the finish line while keeping everyone happy is another story. Enter Mosaic, everything you need once a lead becomes a client. Mosaic picks up where CRMs leave off to streamline the client experience and maximize your productivity. It's the operating platform that gives agents and teams everything they need to stay organized and proactive throughout the entire transaction process and beyond. Transaction management, forms, AI powered collaborative search, client retention capabilities, and advanced analytics for your business. In other words, you can use Mosaic to create a powerful flywheel for your business. It will help you close every deal, boost your profitability, and generate more repeat and referral business. If you need a better way to run your business, check out the link below and learn how Mosaic can help you today. The likelihood of NAR revitalizing itself at this point and being the association that all agents rally around is seemingly day by day getting smaller and smaller. And so what you're going to see is like Mauricio and Jason Haber's deal, area AREA, one letter too many in my opinion. But you got to go with three letters. But their new association, which is going to be centered around a national MLS, there's a lot of holes I can poke in it. No, there hasn't been a broker that's been capable of building a national MLS. They're talking about raising $50 to $100 million. That's not going to be enough. I mean, a
Mm-hmm.
CRM follow-up boss sold for 500 million. You need more than, probably half a billion to build a national MLS, and it's going to be very hard. And MLSs don't want that to happen. They're going to push against that. Um, if anybody's capable of building a national MLS, it's going to be, Rich Barton or Andy Florence. I don't think, nothing against Mauricio and
Yes.
Jason. I like Jason a lot. I just don't think they're going to be the players that are going to be able to pull that off just by raising money and hiring a couple of software guys. So you need the whole industry to buy into it. I don't think that's going to happen. I think you're going to have a fragmentation of different associations. You're basically going to tribalize the community. It's going to leave the agent community pretty vulnerable. And ultimately, what's going to happen by this, this whole commission lawsuit, this whole thing that Ketchmark has spearheaded, in the end, far less agents are going to do more of the deals. Okay, you're going to have um, you're gonna be, and Ryan Serhant, when I did a podcast with him, everybody should go listen to that. He kind of alluded to this, where you're just gonna have, you're always gonna have salespeople, but now you're gonna have less salespeople working this industry. He also said you should know everything about this so that you have an answer for it. He's not giving you I've heard a lot of, people out there, keep your head down, ignore it. No, no, no. Know everything about it.
Horrible
And
advice.
if you get a question, you're going to be able to have a reaction to it. And you're going to be able to speak, you're going to be able to speak in a professional manner about this. And you can point towards the National Association, really being the one with the biggest problem, not necessarily how you and I as a consumer are going to engage in this transaction here and what my value is being offered to you if you want to hire me and negotiate a commission to work for me. And I'm not hearing anybody have these kind of debates. Michael Ketchmark had a debate with a broker in Massachusetts on Housing Wire recently. It was a really bad look for the industry. I'm surprised that Housing Wire picked the individual that they picked. I don't know, the broker in Massachusetts, Lamakia, but I certainly know he got frazzled pretty easily up there against Michael Ketchmark. From what I've seen from the debate, He's not as educated as I would have liked him to be. I think Housing Wire could have picked a much better representative. I thought he got punched in the mouth by Ketchmark. It was a pretty easy defeat for Ketchmark in that debate. Clayton Collins, who I respect, the CEO of Housing Wire, is pushing people to go watch that video. I'm like, Clayton, bro, this isn't even good. You should take it down. I mean, it was pretty pathetic. I'd be more selective. Certainly, if we were going to do something like that from BAM, we wouldn't just grab an over emotional CEO and slap, or a broker rather, and slap him up there against Ketchmark. We put some players that could compete. And Ketchmark's had his way. I think honestly, I think Josh Flagg had the best debate against him, a few months ago. But really, everybody else hasn't been able to do it. Ricky Carruth was pretty smart by pulling back because Ricky's like, you know what? I don't want to get wrapped up in a lawsuit. This guy's freaking steamrolling people right now. He took his video down and backed away from doing a debate with Ketchmark. Now we've got this Housing Wire piece that could be used against the industry. You look at Andy Dalton, or not Andy Dalton,
I know you're the
Dalton.
video with Tom,
Yeah,
right?
his first name's escaping me. Alan Dalton's video on an
Yes,
old
that's it.
Tom Ferry podcast that was used against. So I think Ricky was smart by saying, you know what, I'm not going to let my material be used against me, and decided not to go and battle Ketchmark. Listen, home services is going to settle, and we'll see if this thing if everybody gets relief across the country. If they do, we go back to doing business. In probably a different way for sure. You definitely are going to have more clear conversations if you haven't already been doing that. Um, and I think there's going to just be less agents doing more of the deals as you move forward.
Well, that's a great point, Byron. And I mean, the Serhant, I saw some clips from the Serhant interview, and it's interesting. We were prepping for the show, and typically Ryan Serhant gets interviewed by people that like Bravo and other things, and they don't ask about business questions. And it sounds like you did a really nice job with that. But what I like is, Serhant's a player in the industry, right? I don't
A
know him.
big
I've
player.
seen
He's
him
a real
speak a
business
couple times.
operator too, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and he's focused on how do I run a business, which is something that is lacking in the real estate industry, right? That's where Club 87 comes in. The 87% of agents that are going to be gone in 5 years, and Ricky Carruth pulling back, I don't think is a bad move. I mean, I spoke out a lot when Pennsylvania was shut down when we had the pandemic. I felt some effects of that. I mean, I'm going to be very clear. I mean, you don't think this stuff happens, it does, and we'll just kind of leave it there. And go ahead.
No, Sirhan also made a point. He said he believes brokerages like he's got 300 agents. He's a growing brokerage.
Hmm.
He launched during COVID. These smaller brokerages like Lisa Chinati's brokerage in Mass, right? He believes are going to be in a unique position to take over during that. There's going to be bigger opportunity for them. These bigger ones now are paying out 70 million, and they might have a little bit of they might have to pull back. They might lose agent count over this. They collect agents, right? And just like
Hmm.
some of these big brokerages have made the mistake, led by NAR, to just collect bodies. Okay, so every agent listening to this, here's the biggest thing you can take away from this conversation around the lawsuits. Don't wait for NAR to come save your ass. They're going to leave you holding the bag if you're waiting for them to make a decision for you. They're not incentivized to raise the standard in which we operate. Gary Keller's incentivized to make sure his brokerage continues to operate, which is why in the settlement, he's raising the standard, just like Remax and Anywhere have already, in which their agents are going to operate moving forward. NAR is not incentivized to raise the standard because it means they're going to make the people making decisions are going to make less money, or they're not going to have any money to be made on their salary. What do I mean by that? They're incentivized to continue to rack up dues, to rack up bodies. Okay. Why has homelessness not ended in some of the major cities across America? Because people are getting paid in San Francisco to end homelessness, and they're getting paid $250,000, $300,000, and homelessness keeps racking up. Because if they ended it, they'd get a handshake and they say, "Job well done. We're going to give you a medal." and they wouldn't get $250,000, $300,000 of salary. So they have no incentive to end it. Okay. Just like NAR has no incentive to end the accumulation of dues that they've been acquiring here over the years. Don't count on them to come save you. They're not going to do it. Be educated yourself and be able to articulate your exact value over and over and over again to consumers and why they should work with you and pay your fee that you're willing to stand behind. That's a negotiation.
So a lot to unpack there. We got a little feisty Byron here, which I like because I'm pretty passionate about this as well. We were talking yesterday about this, how to educate people around it. And Serhant's right. You've got to know this stuff. The I don't know answer, or I forgot, or I missed something. The toleration level for that is going to be non-existent. We're past the COVID market. We're past all these other things. So you've got to know your stuff backwards and forwards. That's number one. That's what a knowledge broker
You have
does.
a great
So I
script on
totally
this that you shared with me. When
and
if I
it's
were to
it,
say, "Hey Tom, I heard about this commission deal, this commission lawsuit going on. What's going on here? I'm a consumer. What's going on?"
So, Byron, I'm really glad you brought that up because there is a commission lawsuit and some companies have settled. It went to appeals right away. So we don't really know how it's going to play out. So tell me what you understand about the commission lawsuit.
And see what you're doing right there is great because you're now making sure, hey, I want to understand what you understand, consumer, so I can address those. And you're in control of the conversation when you go Phil Jones on me and ask the question.
Well, and then people are going to say whatever they say. Hey, Byron, the good news here is that right now, the way agents get compensated has not changed. It could change in the future. We don't know when that's going to happen, but right now it's not. So let me break down what the transaction looks like. And then you've got to have the ability. And this is something that like I get so nervous when I hear this from agents. If you can't break down a closing cost estimate in front of somebody or have something ready to show them what they're going to be responsible for on the buy side, there's two numbers you got to care about: cash to close and monthly payment, right? Like that's really what consumers want to know. On the seller side, it's how much are you netting? Like that's if you can't do that stuff and show them what it means, or hey, you have three options. You don't have to pay an agent. That might hurt our marketing. We can pay an agent a little, maybe less than what we normally would and see what happens and adjust, or we can pay them what we would normally pay them and price the home accordingly with the goal of getting you as much money as possible because it's all about your net. And let me show you what the net looks like. Like this is the scripting and conversations you need to be practicing. We did a whole training on this. We had like 400 people register for this. We did it in our office. We did it on Zoom, and it's not a script. It's just questions, like
Yeah,
getting clear on, hey, what do you know? And what do I know?
Serhant, in that interview I did with him, made the point that we represent the deal, the transaction. If you sit down with a title rep at closing, or if you're an attorney state, you sit down with the attorney with closing, and there's a stack of paper that seems like it's an encyclopedia. Well, what does a great attorney or a great title rep do? They're able to look at one page and they're able to explain the page to the consumer. Hey, this is what all these words on the document mean in one sentence. We're in a contract business. Sirhan would say we're representing the deal. We're representing the transaction. Being a real estate sales professional, you're in the business of getting contracts signed, buyer representation agreements, listing representation agreements, purchase and sale contracts is how you're ultimately going to get paid. If you can't, like Lisa says, if you can't present and walk a customer through each and every single contract, and for every paragraph have one sentence on how to explain it, because you know the thing inside and out, you know when it changes, you know when it shifts, you know when it adjusts, then you're just a door opener. Okay, you're not doing anybody the service that they hired you to do. Presenting and explaining a contract is getting you closer to more closings, and doing that with great articulation as if you were a title rep or an attorney brings you closer to the fee that you want and desire in your business.
Yeah, and I mean that's one of the things I see people get all jumbled up with, and that, hey, Byron, I want to get more listings, right? You've probably heard that before from people inside your team, outside your team, whatever. Okay, so do you have the presentation down? Like I've forgotten the listing package that we have before, and still was able to give a presentation and get the contract signed. Like that's how well you have to know it. It's committed to memory. Mike Farah used to do this to all his coaches. You ever hear this story where he would call them up and be like, hey, can you recite the listing appointment right now? If they couldn't, he would hang up on them and say, you're not ready yet. Like, that's a trainer. And if you can't do all this stuff, then and you walk in there and you're bumbling and fumbling around, like, I mean, you're selling a house. It's gonna create a lot of doubt. So,
And
where go ahead.
DocuSign has hurt a lot of agents.
That's where I was going with it.
Okay.
I'll send you the docs, right? Like, that is one of the worst things you can do, because let's say you're at someone's house or you're at a buyer consultation at your office, a buyer meeting. Don't call it a consultation. No one knows what that means to the consumers. And hey, Byron, so hey, you and Nicole, you want to get started? And you say, yes. Great. I'll send you the paperwork. No, no, no. You've got them there. You've got a yes. Great. I got the paperwork right here. Why don't we go over it now and I can answer any questions that you have? And paragraph 1 means this. Paragraph 2 means this. Exactly what you're talking about. It should be no longer than 2 sentences, in my view. That's my opinion. If you got a different one, I'd love to hear that. Great. Let me get a copy of this stuff for you right now. If you are walking out of the room on a listing appointment or letting the buyer leave after you meet with them, after you get a yes, you know what happens? You lose control. And when you lose control, a lot of things can happen. Get a call later. Hey, Byron, I was thinking about moving ahead with you, but I talked to my wife and she's got a third cousin twice removed and I kind of feel bad. And you're done. It's over. When you get a yes, and this is what people don't get. You get a yes, you want to act on the yes. It's no different than when you ever hear someone talk themselves out of an appointment on the phone, Byron. Has that ever happened before?
Oh,
They get a yes and then, oh, great. And then they're like, hey, you know what? I actually changed my mind. I'm out. You get a yes, you move forward with clear next steps. That is very important. But if you haven't practiced the docs, if you don't know what the contracts say, how can you advise somebody? I mean, it's a real problem. And I didn't DocuSign. When did DocuSign start? I feel like it was like 2008. I remember the first time I used it. I'm like, what the hell is this? This is amazing. I'd already been in the business. So it was an acceleration tool. It's not, hey, I'll send you the docs and then you're scrambling to explain
well,
everything to them because you haven't read through the
I
contract.
mean, in the beginning of my career, most consumers didn't want you to send them, I'd be like, "Hey, I can just send a DocuSign so I don't have to drive over there." They didn't want you to do that because they weren't comfortable at that point. A lot of older clients of mine anyways weren't as comfortable having you send a contract for e-signature and email. And part of that was they also wanted you to walk them through the contract, okay? But then COVID happened and everybody got comfortable with DocuSign. And there's no value in you setting up a DocuSign and sending it to a customer. My 3-year-old on her iPad can figure out how to sign these documents fairly easily because there's just going to be an arrow getting you to the next box. Fill in the blank contracts, getting them set up on DocuSign. AI is going to be able to do that very shortly, if not already. But what AI can't do is go through, I mean, they probably will be able to, but go through and actually explain the contract and then help position that consumer by utilizing the utility of the contract to accomplish their goals, to set up for a great negotiation in the future by positioning your deal, whatever that market or whatever that situation dictates. That's the separation between greatness and, a mediocre agent who's opening doors and filling out, DocuSign documents.
Well, and you talk about value here, which brings us back to this commission lawsuit. Who's more valuable? Someone that can quarterback the whole thing. You don't have to worry about it. You know they've articulated that to you. You trust them, or someone who's making mistakes when they send the paperwork over. You ever have an agent? You ever see this? They send like the same contract like 4 times with their client. You've lost all trust at that point. Like you don't know what you're doing because you're making mistakes. You're going too fast and you're not paying attention. Most agents in Pennsylvania don't even know the laws, which is really like we have some systems at our office to prevent this for our team, especially when you got new agents. But I don't know what the laws are in Connecticut, Byron. Did you know you have to provide a cost estimate with every single change to contract? This is something that's what the law says in Pennsylvania. And agents have told, oh, I don't need to send that. Well, you're breaking the law, pal. So let's be, and this is the issue that happens is because you have fill in the blank contracts. So to go back to what Serhant said, and I think this is going to really articulate this really well, is when you work for the deal, you got to know all aspects of the deal. You got to know what happens from the initial phone call to getting to closing. And if something goes sideways, let's say there's a title problem, right? Oh, let me call the title company. No, 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 no. That's not the like. If you don't know the answer, fine. Buy yourself some time. Get back to them, but don't say, "Hey, we got to talk to title," because then you've lost control.
Or, hey, why
The
don't you go call your title rep? Or why don't you go call your lender? If you're the agent, you're in the middle of that deal. You think Patrick Mahomes' agent, when he gets an issue with a sponsor, is saying to Patrick Mahomes, "Well, why don't you call State Farm and figure it out?" No, that agent's banging the phones with State Farm and doing the deal so Patrick can hang out with Travis and T Swift. That's what's going on. They're doing the work for him. They're out there doing the dirty work in between his sponsorships, his business arrangements, the team, and
Mhm.
him, so he can focus on what he's great at, which is potentially winning a third Super Bowl in a week.
A great example of that is inspections, and a lot of agents haven't had to deal with that because of the pandemic. When inspection issues come up, we have older homes here. I know you do too. Hey, hey, I sent the report over. Let me know what you want. How like you're dealing with a homeowner or a first time buyer. They don't know what they want. They don't know what's important. You've got to have them read through it. They should go to the inspection with the inspector. We don't go to them, but we get the report afterwards. Then you set up a call to strategize. All right, so hey, tell me your concerns about the report. See what they say. So hey, what are you worried about here? Let's go over this. And then if you can't articulate, hey, this is going to cost this, or I've got an expert that can look at this and give you a quote. Some people don't want to work deals because they get hard, and there's lost opportunities for transactions. I mean, this has happened to me hundreds of times. Someone flips out because they see a repair. It ends up being a couple $100, but there was some alarmist language in the inspection report, or maybe the inspector didn't know. And if you're not willing to work the deal, like Serhant said, you're going to lose business because there's nothing worse than getting someone under contract, getting them through the hurdles that you got to get over here, and then you got to get them back in the car and show them something else and find another property. You know what they're going to do? They're going to compare it to the home they lost, and they're going to be upset about it in a low inventory environment, or they're going to doubt your ability to help them navigate the home. Like they might get worried that you don't even know what you're looking at. So this is where understanding all facets of the transaction are going to be so critical because all the problems fall on the real estate agent. Like you mentioned, lenders or title or whoever else. You know who the problem solver here is? It's the real estate agent, right? The lender, sometimes they get a friend, they go online. Like, I mean, obviously, they don't always use the lenders we recommend. You got to be ready to deal with that person. You got to be ready to manage that lender to hit deadlines because lenders just like the deadlines to them mean nothing, even though like it's ridiculous. Title, same thing. Hey, there's an easement here. Here's what I know. Let's talk to so and so. I'm going to get on the phone right now. I'll get back to you by X time with some answers here. And then you're the one controlling everything.
Since April, we have uploaded new and sought after courses, content, and tactical assets for your business into the BAMX platform. Not articles behind a paywall that only pontificate to you what you should think and do, but education that actually shows you how to do what you need in today's market. Every day, we continue to add more content into BAMX and our private Facebook community. Content that works, content that our members have exclusive access to daily. It's why over 1,500 of you and climbing have joined us in BAMX. It's also why tomorrow's price is guaranteed to be higher than today's. That's called inflation. Do not wait any longer. Use code Knowledge Brokers and join the thousands of agents taking their business to the next level today. Code Knowledge Brokers for 10% off. See you in BAMX. Yeah, if you're just the consumer going back and forth with the lender and it's a complicated deal, sometimes the lender's just going to go and just, kind of do thing. Not, I don't want to say by the book, because obviously lenders got to be by the book, but they're not going to get creative in the deal without somebody who's been through hundreds or thousands of deals to help the lender as a teammate get the deal to the finish line. We had an agent here who it's her personal deal, and she's like, "Oh man, the lender's saying this," so she's like really not even, she's thinking about it from a personal consumer standpoint because it's her personal property that she's buying. I said, and just as if I was her agent, I called the lender who we work with. I said, "Bro, let's figure this problem out. This has been looming over this deal for a week and a half. Within 12 hours, he had it figured out, and the deal started moving forward because I
Mhm.
had the conversation." And to your point about inspections or appraisals, having that conversation so that when you talk to your consumer, hey, we had the conversation with the inspector at the house. He sent the report over. I had another phone conversation going through this with him. Here's you and Lisa said something to me this week. Hey, make sure agents are getting the intel on the deal. That's from the inspector. That's if you're presenting them from the buy side, that's from the listing agent. We had an agent, Michelle, who just won a deal being the second place or being the second highest monetary number, but had 12 conversations with the listing agent and in between presenting the offer and securing the deal. Why did she win with a lower number? Well, because the agent with the higher number stopped communicating at a rapid speed like Michelle was. And so that agent that kind of drifted away thinking, I've got the highest number, I'm just going to let the email do the work. That listing agent got concerned that that agent's not going to be responsive through the rest of the deal and said, man, we've communicated 12 times in 3 days. I've got faith in you. I've articulated that to my sellers. They've got faith in you moving forward on this deal, and we're picking you. And it's based off of the art of the deal, knowing the ins and outs and having those communications.
Well, you know what the biggest complaint is about real estate agents? It's people don't hear back from them. It's the number one complaint year after year. And that's a great example. And I have this conversation with folks all the time, and it's, oh, I didn't get back to you. And it's like 3 days going by. I'm like, so what are you doing with your clients? Because when they don't hear from you, they go somewhere else. And if you're not, but this also goes for other agents, because a smart listing agent, their goal is to, when you talk about working the deal, to get the home sold and to get the best terms and price. But getting the home sold, it's either you do it or you don't. There is no in between there, and it's the same on a purchase side. So when there's lack of communication, there's bad paperwork. When you get an offer that looks all screwed up, and it's, like I've gotten like sideways scans before. The proof of funds is all messed up. They're sending me screenshots. Could be anybody for proof of fund. Like that stuff doesn't work. And it's how you do things. And you've probably heard this before. How you do anything is how you do everything. So I don't want to hear, oh, I don't do that with my clients. Well, that's bullshit, because we all know that's what happens. You've got to be communicative. You've got to be in touch with people, and you've got to know the process. And you talked about how, and I think this is a great way to kind of wrap this up here, is you talked about how Serhant and Chinati, right? Like they may have a little bit of an upper hand because they're smaller independent companies. Let's call them. They're not a big box.
Yep.
I'm a big believer that the organizations that are going to thrive in this kind of environment with commission lawsuits and everything else are the ones that educate their people in the right way. I can't tell you how many brokers locally have said, "Oh, that commission lawsuit's going to go away." I'm like, yeah, let me know how that goes. I'm gonna bet you on that one and totally disagree. But also, it's the organizations that pivot and adjust to the current market. Evolution is the only constant we see in history. And if you can't evolve as an organization and you're collecting bodies like NAR has, right? Like we've got high standards at our team. I know you do as well. When people don't hold up those standards, they shouldn't work with you. Otherwise, you're validating what they're doing. And it's communication, market knowledge, following processes. All this stuff works. And it's implementing it is what is holding most people back in the industry. The organizations that build a culture around that, they're the ones that are going to thrive, while some of these other people are going to go out of business or see their transaction count drop tremendously.
Well, look at where our mind just went in this pod. We're talking about the commission lawsuits, and then we start going into let's start solving some of these problems, become experts in contract communication, right? How do we raise the standard in which we operate? And that's where the whole conversation, shifted to. It's not about don't get educated on the commission lawsuits to get wrapped up in the drama. Get educated in the commission lawsuits so that you can sign more contracts far into the future, no matter what a little worm like Michael Ketchmark decides to do. So
I've got a great anecdote on this here. So we do live listing presentations to train our folks on our team, because we're big believers that you got to list to last, you got to list to exist, and we're going to show people how to do that. Most organizations don't. I know you do the same. So does Lisa. And so we did one of these on Tuesday, and our sales manager Brian's there with one of our agents, and the presentation went well. First time this person was doing it, it was pretty well, followed the script, all that stuff, and then our sales manager gave her a little bit of like, hey, will you do it at a lower commission, right? Like this stuff happens. It's happened to you. I know it's happened to me. I want to list it higher and I want a lower commission. Very common thing that happens. And we got about 20 agents watching, and we ask everyone, hey, how'd it go? And everyone says, well, when it came to the commission, do this. When it came to the price, do this. And I let everyone speak first with the feedback. I don't want to poison anyone's mind. And my response was, hey, I'm glad we're talking about this, guys, but we've got this all wrong. The focus should be on delivering such a powerful presentation that the commission doesn't even come up, that they are locked in on hiring Byron Lazine or Tom Toole or Lisa Chinati or whomever. That's the goal of the presentation, buyer presentation and seller presentation. If you look at what consumers care about, and this is what knowledge brokers understand, Zillow did a survey on this with NAR. They do it every year. Most consumers care about time frame, getting the house that they want, making sure the deal doesn't fall apart, and balancing a buy-sell. Commission and price are there, and they're concerns, but they're not the top concerns. And everyone focuses on that instead of focusing on how can I make this easier for the person that wants to transact. And that's the mindset that we talked about here, but that's also going to be what helps people win and thrive in this commission lawsuit environment.
100%. We had a couple other things. I don't know if you want to, if we go rapid fire on.
All right, let's do it. I'm going to give it to you here. Let's go 30-second responses. So the Fed met. They didn't raise rates. Jerome Powell didn't stick his foot in his mouth twice in a row. I mean, we should be high-fiving here. I see this as a good thing. I think we're set up nicely for a couple rate cuts. What do you think?
Yeah, I was actually for once satisfied that when they went to the question and answer, they asked about 3 different journalists asked questions about housing. You can get those timestamps if you're a BAMX member in the hot sheet show notes. And the big headline out of this was that he said, we don't control house prices. You have a Fed that doesn't care about home ownership. You have a Fed that just wants to stabilize pricing. Their mandate from Congress is stabilize pricing and to, have maximum employment while they do that. Price stability and maximum employment. So they don't care if your consumer is renting. In fact, the government and the Fed probably prefer a renter nation. They care about the short term. Okay. And so it wasn't surprising that he pushed back on that Elizabeth Warren letter from earlier in the week and the questions around housing affordability. That really isn't their job. And it's true because that's the mandate again, Congress has. So while we're going to complain about the affordability of housing because we care about home ownership, it's not a concern of Powell's. The other thing is, I'm a little. I was thinking we were going to get a March cut. Doesn't look like we will, based off of those comments.
I agree.
So the takeaway for agents off of this is do not get wrapped up like I've seen other people do in predicting or guaranteeing or promising rates that begin with a 5 this year. To me, there's way too many hurdles to jump through before we get to that. I'm rooting for it. I want it. There's enough analysis to suggest that the 30-year will continue to decline throughout the year, but to guarantee that, we've seen enough evidence in 33 days here at the beginning of the year to suggest that you'd be really sticking your neck out, and there's a lot of opportunity for you to be wrong on that, and that's bad for consumers. I'd rather see a consumer secure a deal now with maybe a little bit higher rate, but less competition at the beginning of the spring market than wait for these prices to go up another 5% in the spring and not even know where the interest rate ends up then.
I posted a script on Instagram. Maybe we want to link this up, whatever you guys want to do, where it's when you get this objection, people want to wait for rates to come down. So we're going to go questions again, Byron, right? How certain are you rates are going to come down? See what people say. How are you going to feel if rates don't come down or there's more competition and prices rise and your costs stay the same and you don't get the house that you want? Like, this is what you have to talk to people about, because there are agents out there saying, hey, rates are going to come down. We're going to see 5. I mean, you've got to be ready with this stuff. I agree with you. I think we're going to see maybe high 5s the end of the year, best case scenario, but the rates have been stable, which is a good thing because people like stability when they're making big purchases. I mean, we pretty much know where rates are going to be, at least for the foreseeable future, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, obviously there's always things that can happen, but we've seen pretty clearly 6 1/8 to 6.5 is kind of where they're bouncing around locally, at least in our market. Last thing here, because we're short on time, Lance Lambert and the Resiclub did a nice job. I just shared this chart with Haley. She can post it up. Active U.S. housing inventory for sale, according to Realtor.com, in January 2024, there were 665,000 plus listings on Realtor.com. That's 8% above January 2023, 25% above the housing boom in 2021. but still 40% below pre-pandemic January 2019. I see this as an encouraging sign that we're seeing inventory grow. It gives people options. It might help shake loose people that are at the end of their rope and have been thinking about moving for 2 or 3 years because they're locked in. I think we're going to see this kind of slow growth this year. It's a good early indicator. I'd also tell agents you need to be looking at the work you're doing now is for April listings. So that's what the conversations you need to be having. Do you see inventory continuing to grow like this through the rest of the year, Byron? What's your take? Give me your analysis here.
On the hot sheet, I've been really excited to see that. Obviously, Lance is referencing this Realtor.com data. I usually reference Altos Research. I've been excited to see that week over week in the month of January, inventory is up year over year, as well as new listings. You know, they're still relatively low in comparison to like a 2019 timeframe before, all the craziness,
Mm-hmm.
but they are trending in the right direction. Tom, until this morning, though, and I covered this on the hot sheet today, and I want your take on this. Inventory's up and new listings are up. That's nationally. Where I'm sitting here in Connecticut, by the way,
Yes, yeah,
it's
agreed.
down. But anyways,
Down here too.
I want Lance's opinion. I want to have Lance back on, and I want to show him this Redfin data that I saw this morning. Okay. What's the deeper story on inventory? Luxury listings defined by the top 5% in market value in a market. That's how Redfin does it.
Good way to do it.
Luxury listings are up 19.7% right now. Non-luxury listings as of right now are down 3.3%. New listings. Total luxury inventory up 13%. Non-luxury inventory down negative 9.7%. So if we're saying nationally inventory is up and new listings is up, what's the deeper story? Is that mostly a higher price point that's inflating those numbers? Because if you were to carve out, according to this Redfin data, if you were to carve out luxury or higher price points or above median price points, you might be faced with overall inventory being down for affordable house for not, I wouldn't even say affordable housing, but median or average priced housing. That would be concerning. If that
So, yeah,
inventory is not there to meet the demand of the current buyer.
it's interesting because there's there's more competitive segments of the market than others in every market. You and I mean, and we could put Lisa in this bucket too. Our median sale price, I hate median, excuse me, average is $426,000, right? So that's not the luxury market. That's just what it is in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is a very affordable city compared to like New York, DC, those sort of places. We're seeing that market still competitive. And the move up from that is also competitive because people typically move up one half their current home's value and down a third. This is this is one of those trends that you see throughout time. So let's say 426, 450 is the average, wherever it shakes out. We're early in the year. So half of that is going to put you in like the 600 to 700 range. That's a very competitive part of the market. Then you get to the top 5%, which is like above $1 million here. We do now. It depends on like what school district you're in, what township you're in. We are seeing more of those homes come to the market. I think the bigger story is going to be told in the next month or two. It's way too early to tell because smart agents and and knowledge brokers, they're telling people get your home on the market sooner because demand's there and there's less competition. So I think it's a little tough to judge this right now, Byron, just because of we've got a month's worth of data where some people don't wake up yet. If this continues, well, the luxury market's always had higher days on market. The stuff always sits there. It's a smaller percentage of the population. And this is where studying your local market, I can tell you the median income for every single county that we work in. Most people buy a home that's going to be 4x their annual income. Median income around here is in the 80 to, high $90,000 range. You get two people earning a good living, right? So let's call it 160 to 180. They're buying an $800,000 house. That's typically what you're looking at. So that's kind of why that 6 to 7 and up is a little bit of a hotter market. But then when you jump up, there's less people that can afford that. There's going to be less traffic. So there might be an opportunity for the kind of the next move up into that premium market, the luxury market, the high-end market, and then those people are going to do really well with the sale of their home. That's kind of how the market's always been. This is what the market was like before 2019. So I don't see this as a bad thing. It's more about knowing your local stats and how to navigate it, because the first time buyer, you got to have a very different conversation with them than someone that's moving up. And
Yeah.
the move up from a 3-bedroom townhome to a single, that's a lot more competitive than they're in the 3,000 square foot single and they're moving to the 5,000 square foot single. That's the conversations you have to have and got to know. We'll see more data here. There might be a bigger story here. I do agree with you. That's also how the market's been. Higher end listings take longer to sell. So this is another sign to me that we're seeing the market normalize to pre-pandemic trends.
Yeah. I mean, we need more inventory to get there, but absolutely the increases are welcome. What's your take on this real quickly before we jump off? Grant Cardone said he believes when rates do get you're laughing, but this is a theory I think that is worth discussing.
I like Grant. I'm not.
That
I just Grant's got some interesting
that when
views.
rates get into the fives, you're gonna have a whole bunch of sellers that come out and hit the market. You're gonna unfreeze and unlock that inventory, right? He believes when
Mhm.
that happens, prices are actually going to stabilize and go down for a short period of time with uncertainty in the market, and then boom. So probably call it a quarter where prices, all this inventory comes on, prices drop just like, maybe 5%, just like a little bit, and then take off like a rocket ship as all the buyers realize, "Ooh, there's inventory low, low rates," and come flooding in, and then prices go shooting back up the other way.
I mean, that theory is going to be a market based theory, and I mean, he's down in what, Florida? So I mean, Florida, that might hold true. I think that's a very real theory. In Connecticut or Pennsylvania, I mean, we need to see like triple the amount of
Yeah.
inventory, quadruple the amount of inventory. So you got to know your markets. I mean, if you look at that chart we posted, where inventory is from Lance Lambert, I mean, we're down like 50% compared to pre-pandemic. I don't think the theory's off, because you look at what happened. I look at history, and 2008 was a very interesting time, right? And you saw this happen in places like Florida, Arizona, Nevada, Ohio. I think had a little bit of a different thing going on there. In California, those 4 states, right? So let's take Ohio out of it because there was a jobs issue there, in my view. That kind of happened there, where prices did go down for a little bit and then they shot right back up. So history would tell us that could be the case. We got to see a ton of inventory in places like the Northeast and some other markets where that's going to really have an impact.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with what he's saying, because when you look at pricing strategies, we had this conversation last night with a seller. There's really 3 of them. You price it below the market to hope you get above. I don't like that strategy, because you can't you can raise the price, but it doesn't send a good message to the market. You price it right where you think it's going to sell for. And that's based on segmentation. So 5s or 10s, right? I mean, 25s or 50s, however you want to look at it. Then price high to bring it down. When you get people that price it right where they think it's going to sell for, the average list to sales price ratio last year in the greater Philadelphia area in the suburbs was 100.1 to 100.3%. In Philadelphia, it was 96.4. So we're still seeing that that's going to hold true. And that's a average price point that's consistent with in the $300,000 to $400,000 range. So I think there's some validity to it depending on the market.
All right. Interesting take there. Love to know your thoughts in the comments below, not just on that, but everything else as discussed. Certainly the Keller Williams news that came out this week. Love to get your feedback there, and maybe we'll have Lisa back next week, Tom.
I mean, does she have where's she going now? Like the
She,
Maldives? She's going to be there next weekend? Like what's going on
she's
here?
buying a 4th house in the Maldives. Maybe.
I actually have some call accountability with her this afternoon, so let's not give her too much of a hard time. We've got about 2.5 hours of phone calls booked that we're going to be doing together, keeping each other accountable. So, um,
I'll be on a plane back to Florida that has no Wi-Fi on it, if you can believe
we
that.
flying. What are you flying? Frontier down there?
A Velo for
No.
$90 or something like that.
I mean, look, you can't beat that price. I mean, you just
Yeah.
deal with it. I mean, when you're going back and forth, that's a smart financial move. So, well, have a safe trip. We said it all today, my man. This was a great episode.
This is a great pod. It's one definitely to share. When you're done with this pod, if you haven't done it, go over and take a listen to that Serhant pod. I think you get a lot of, if you like this knowledge broker stuff, you'll actually get a lot of value out of that pod as well. We'll see you guys back here next week.